about the ISTE certification. So if, like myself, you're based in either the UK or Europe, I don't know how familiar you are with ISTE as an organisation. I imagine if you're in the US, you're very familiar with them. So the ISTE created a set of teacher standards some years ago, and they update them regularly. But more recently, they've developed that into a certification. So that's what we're going to talk about next, which means I am going to bring in Wendy and Gito as well. And I'll just remove Bogdan's Twitter handle so we can all see Gito there. So yeah, A-Learning Lab, which is part of Apps Events, is now in a position to deliver the ISTE certification, which we're really, really pleased about. We think it's a superb addition to the sort of training on technology we're used to doing anyway. But what I'm going to sort of try and do is fire a few questions at the three of you. You've all been through the whole process of what would normally be 2 face-to-face training days, followed by the online sort of portfolio piece of work that takes place over several months following the training. It's worth saying that now, obviously, because of current circumstances, we can deliver those 2 days remotely. So if you go to alearninglab.com, you can have a look at what that looks like and inquire about setting that up. But yeah, Gito, I don't know if you want to start with your reflections on the ISTE certification. I suppose the questions are probably, though I'm looking forward to more questions coming in, is what is it? Why would it be useful for me? And what does it kind of look like? What's involved?
So the ISTE standards, first of all, you have the ISTE Educator standards and the student standards. I'm going to say straight away, Wendy and Bogdan do pipe in if I say something that's wrong here. And they're a set of standards not specific to a subject or specific to a primary teacher or a further education teacher. The educator ones are basically what you can do to make sure you're a good teacher. I guess that's the simplest way of saying it. They're standards centered around your own development, so to make sure that you are continuing to learn as an educator, and then alongside how you are guiding your own students, both to be good citizens, looking at how to behave online and so on, but also help them in terms of design thinking. Ben, I know that's a big part for you. I want to say 25 to 26 standards. Wendy, you're the expert on this. I can tell you right away. She'll tell me off the top of her head how many standards there are in the educator one. Am I close on 25?
24, is it 25?
There you go. That's place. And even before you, even if without doing the certification itself, they're well worth accessing anyway. So I'm sure someone can grab the link and pop it in the comments anyway while we're talking. But they're a good set of standards to follow as an educator. Oh, perfect, even on screen there, Ben. They're useful standards to follow anyway. Now, the certification process takes it a step further. You normally, I hate saying during normal times, but you know what I mean. In pre-lockdown times, I guess, it involves a 2-day, pretty intensive course. We all gathered back in February, right just before, a week or two before lockdown started here in the UK. We gathered for 2 days of face-to-face training, and it's intensive and it's inspiring. It really makes you look deeper at yourself as an educator, taking you out of that day-to-day in the classroom where you're constantly having to think on your feet and actually sit back and going, oh yeah, maybe I do that when I shouldn't. Or, oh, I never thought of doing this. Or, which is equally as valid sometimes, going, yeah, I do that. Maybe I am a good teacher a little bit then. So start off with those 2 days. Then if I pass to Wendy, if you want to talk a bit about the online training that follows after that.
Yes, the online training was really interesting because I think the bit I liked best was when we had the 2 full days. First of all, we got to meet each other. If we weren't a group that were already doing it together, we would be in a cohort. We would have had that 2 days to actually get used to each other, and then you move on to your online course. The way we're going to run that is that they will be in a cohort and they'll do that online, but there will be sessions where they're talking together before they go off and do their individual study. And I think that's going to be a really important part of it, because you can feel quite isolated. And then we had 5 weeks to do the actual online part. And throughout that, there was a lot to do. So you had deadlines for each week. So you weren't just left to do the whole thing in one go. You had each week you had deadlines with 2 or 3 things you had to do. And there was a range of things you had to do. So sometimes you would be writing or creating an artifact. Sometimes you would be posting something up as a discussion thread, and then you would have to peer review someone else's work. Sometimes you'd be giving video feedback. So there was a whole range of different things to do then. I think that really keeps you engaged. There was also really good feedback and timely feedback from the team as well, so that, you know, it kept you on track.
Yeah, I did find it interesting and useful, actually, that I hadn't expected how much it was still working together in a way, even though we're all working our own way through the criteria and we're all working from home. So even this online part is online during normal times as well. It's self-learning in a way, following the online course. But every week it was give feedback to others on what they've written, put your reflections here and look at other people's reflections and give feedback to that, or look at the resource they've made and give them feedback so they can improve it. So it's constant talking and working together anyway, even in a asynchronous course when we're all doing it at different times of the week. And I guess having those deadlines, even though sometimes I would lambast them to high heaven, they're actually useful in that, because it kept us all around the same work at the same time, meaning that we could still have those discussions. We had a nice chat group going with everyone helping each other out as well.
I also thought it was really useful because we got to see what our colleagues were doing as well. So, and we don't often get that chance to do that. I learned a lot about the team that I was working with and how they work and their approaches to things through that. And that sort of opened my eyes quite a lot. Sorry, Bogdan.
No, actually, that's exactly what I wanted to say as well, because that's happening quite often, even in schools, when we would like to work with our colleagues, but we don't have time because things get crazy. That's one thing. The other thing is now we were working not only with our direct colleagues, but you can actually work with teachers from other schools, other countries, other states, wherever, and you can get so many different insights that you wouldn't have received just in your school. So that's just an added bonus.
Well, I think it's fair to say that ISTE didn't create this to be a tick box exercise that could be done in a short period of time. That was a very enthusiastic sort of agreement there from everyone. Well, disagreement, if you like. So the impression I get is that that it's really valuable to have that team around you. I equate it in a very different circumstance to my wife and her sort of what's the name of the group that gathers together before you give birth? Oh, I've completely forgotten. NCT or something like that. But that group where you just need to have someone who understands exactly what you're going through at that time. And as much as people can be supportive, it's nice to have that backup of like working together. So it sounds like that's an important part of the process.
Yeah, achieving this ISTE Standard certification, it's not a tick box exercise. It's a substantial contribution of time, and you got to be aware of that beforehand. You've got the 2-day workshop, or now that it's online, I think it's 5 12 webinars. It's running at 4, 12 webinars is running at now. So yes, you have that, but then you have these 5 weeks of online learning, probably 3 to 4 hours a week, working on those. And then when that's finished, you then have your portfolio phase, which lasts over 4 to 6 months, less intensive than when you're doing those 3.5 hours each week. But it's still a substantial input where you're showing evidence of you using these standards and reaching these standards in your daily working life. So it's something that when you finish, which we've all done recently, our deadline's been quite recent, you really do have that sense of satisfaction. You feel that, wow, I've achieved this. I haven't been given this. Not everyone passes. Not everyone reaches, even submits work by the end, I guess. Luckily, the majority do. But it's a certification that, yes, is worth having on CV. Yes, it's worth having because it improves your own pedagogy and your own learning. But but it also makes you feel quite good when you get it, in that you've worked hard and you've been recognized for that hard work.
Yeah, because one of the things we've been looking at in terms of delivering this is obviously yourselves as trainers will be there to support that cohort through whether it's 2 days in person or whether it's the 4 sessions. But there's a wider team, and what we're looking to do is obviously pair up trainers where possible. And then when they go into the online phase, which is arguably the difficult bit, right, where you step away from that course together and you've got to work a bit more independently, we're looking for some consistent support across that to make sure people feel supported through it. Obviously, like Bogdan said, there's the opportunity to work. So there's going to be online courses that anyone from, where time zone is convenient can join and work together. But it also, there's going to be the option to have it hosted by your school, or you might decide that a group of 3 or 4 of you are going to join together. So there's definitely some support that we're putting in place to make sure that it is a manageable challenge. But like you say, it's a challenge nonetheless. What are some of the insights that you've kind of felt as you've gone through the standards and built your artifacts and given feedback? Are there any kind of standout moments of reflection for yourselves on your own practices?
Yeah, I think, some of the things when I first read the standards, because it is a really good idea to, if you're thinking of doing this, to look at the standards first. Don't come in cold to it. Have a read through them. If they don't completely make sense, that's fine, but have read them before you start. But I noticed that, I read a few and thought, oh, that's really easy. I do that all the time. And when I went to put the portfolio together and actually put the artifact together, I really had to dig deep to find evidence that I was doing that. So, for instance, there's Citizen 3C, which is looking at intellectual property and what else is it looking at? Safe and legal use of stuff. Yeah. So I thought I did that all the time. And it wasn't until I really started to look at the artifacts, I realized, yes, I do it, but it's sporadic. It's hit and miss where I do it. And as a trainer, rather than a teacher that's seeing the same people over and over again, I really had to find ways where I could build evidence of that into my practice across the board. So I think it really did change the way I did that and certain other things as well.
I also had a similar issue, like when they said, as a trainer, the perspective is slightly different because we see like our learners, the teachers, we see them for 1 or 2 days or 4 or 6 sessions online and so on and so forth. And we have to adapt things. And I also had that, let's call it struggle or let's say opportunity, because that also forced me to organize my training sessions better, to find that silver lining that would remind me to have a look at all of these standards and also implement them in every single session, even if it's just, hey, let's have a look at this quickly and let's think about how you can do that with your students in the classroom. For me, that was, as I said, the opportunity because it was that structure that helped me keep things together in a very cohesive way. I was mentioning, to follow your example, the whole idea of copyright and intellectual property before, but since I started working on the portfolio, everything seemed to fit much better in place. And that's, I think, the biggest outcome for me from this whole process, not the artifacts, not the standards, not the portfolio, but how I've changed my approach while I was working on the portfolio and how I started to look at things from a different angle.
Absolutely.
I found that, so in the group of us that took it at the same time, we had Bogdan referred to there, a mix of people who are trainers and therefore spend their time training adults and not the same adults each week, moving from one school to another, set of teach from another. And we had full-time teachers who have their own class and run. And it was interesting to be a little bit of bridge in that gap because I still teach my own class, but also do training. And the thing that hit me was that the skills really were bridging both. The criteria hitting, some of them were going, oh, I do that in my trainings all the time. And then a bit down the road, as Wendy said, when you suddenly think, I don't do it in my class that often. Or, oh, yeah, I do this to the children every day. I've never done that in my trainings. And it was quite open to it's not obvious when you say it, but to realize, yeah, that the skills I need to teach my 7-year-old students, a lot of those are skills I need when I'm teaching those 30 to 50-year-old teachers as well.
Yeah,
you were quite a rowdy group, if I remember correctly, in London. So I think some of those 7-year-old teaching skills were definitely needed. I mean, that's a really important point, I think, about it, is whether you're kind of working as a kind of edtech coach across a load of teachers and you're not in the classroom every day, or whether you are sort of grade 4 teaching each and every day with all the students. There seems to be something in there for both of those situations, and obviously a great opportunity to work together. And actually, obviously we've got the 3 of you on today, but in terms of our cohort of trainers who are going to be delivering these sessions, Gitta, your background is primary. You still work in a primary school. Wendy, your background's in further education. Bogdan, a secondary science teacher. So we've got a lot of coverage. Obviously, Kim is sort of middle school, based in Germany, and Heather in the Netherlands. So I think one of the things that we were really pleased to be able to do was have a wide range of expertise and backgrounds amongst the trainers, and we'll try and continue to build that as we go. And hopefully we'll see that reflected in the cohorts that you work with.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
And what is great is we've pushed quite heavily, I guess, on the commitment it took and the work it took into it. But obviously, as a team now of trainers, the support that we'll be giving is model on the support we got when we did it ourselves. So we had 3 different trainers working with us, either in person on the day or then through the process. And Wendy said timely feedback earlier. It's, yes, you submit things every week and you get feedback pretty much a couple of days after each week. You have trainers there that you can contact and ask questions. I think I've lost count on the amount of video calls we've been together with one or more of the trainers over the past 6 months. So you've got the joint support of that team of trainers behind you, which will be us now, but then also of your own group. And I cannot stress enough how useful it has to have a group just for those in your cohorts, probably without the trainers, just so that you can ask the questions a lot of themes every now and then as well. But still remember, those trainers are there at the other end of email. And when things got harder, or when we had difficulties with things, they were always there to email and to answer and to come into chats when we needed them. And I think that's something that we then are going to model ourselves on from what we experienced when we were the students.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be one of the big advantages going into the courses you deliver. Is it's pretty recent that you've been through it and been in their shoes, which will be really valuable. And I think hopefully we'll also see trainers come from cohorts like we do with all of the Google for Education work that we do. And there's many trainers I now work with that were attendees in my sessions and things like that. Actually, I noticed Katie's put a comment. I appreciate certifications that actually mean something. I know that we've spoken to a few schools where they've provided the opportunity for their teachers to become Google Certified Educators, level 1, level 2, through to Certified Trainer. And actually, a few of the schools that we've worked with before are looking at this as their next step. While they found that G Suite and Chromebooks and their teachers sort of moving through the educator and trainer certifications has been really valuable for the learning they're able to offer, that actually this seemed like the logical next step for them to look a bit more widely at their pedagogy and how they can leverage technology effectively. Does that feel like relevant, that you can take these standards and apply it in the way that you do get the best out of technology in schools?
Absolutely, yeah, because it's not dependent on the technology you use either. So you can do one artifact on Google and another on a different platform. It doesn't matter what the technology it is you're using. That's what becomes irrelevant, really, in terms of the certification. It's more about how you're using it and how you're putting the strategies in place to use it. Yeah, for me, that was really interesting to see, because we focused a lot on Google over the last few years. So it was good to sort of just look and to see what other people were using.
It made sense to me to also put in your Twitter handle as well, Wendy, while you were sharing there, because I know that you share a lot of good stuff if people are sort of want to, not only for ISTE, but actually a bit of a shout out for your Feel Good Edu. So one of Wendy's key projects is around, I suppose, supporting mental health and well-being for teachers and educators. It's never an easy job, and it's often got tougher. I know further education in particular has had a very challenging time here in the UK. So yeah, as well as ISTE's ISTE tips and various things, following Wendy's also a really useful thing if you sort of want to sort of manage that challenge of balancing work and life and everything else as well.
One of the things, Ben, that you said earlier about having, we're looking at some schools doing the ISTE certification together at first. That is going to be so valuable for the school, because it's great when one person does it and they're the person that goes in and advocates for it. But if you have a group of people going in like we did, you can totally change the way your school or college works really quickly, because you've got a group of people that have made that change together. And it's like 10 times learning, really. It's 10 times the change in that same time, because you've got all of those people working together. And it also gives you a chance to talk to people that are doing a similar job in a similar organisation. And I know, even though we're working in different training sessions, we've sort of talked behind the scenes and looked at each other's portfolios and given tips on how we might go, or just chatted about it. And I think that's really good. I mean, it'll work if you've got a cohort of strangers to start with, because you won't be strangers. But I think there is real value in a group of people from the same school doing it together.
Yeah, and one of the things that I found about the situation we found ourselves with COVID-19 and working remotely is that while I really value our in-person sessions and the relationships you can build in those, one of the things that has been a benefit of providing more remote sessions is actually access to the training, more equitable access. Some schools are very able to provide their teachers with time to leave school for a day or two and engage in training, but actually for a lot of schools that's really difficult for a number of reasons. And actually remote training, because you don't want to sit on a video call for 7 or 8 hours in the day, remote training inevitably gets split up over a period of time. So it does feel like there's more option to actually engage in that for more people. So hopefully we'll see that too. So just in case you are interested in finding a bit more about the online ISTE offering, the 100% online program, then feel free to follow that little bit.ly link and find out a little bit more about how you can sign up for that. I feel like it's sort of natural time to start wrapping up. Really appreciate everyone's contributions so far. Anything that anyone wants to add in relation to ISTE or anything else we've spoken about today before we close out and just give our thank yous to everyone's time?
Just that we've constantly mentioned about the time commitment and the fact that there's a lot of work for it. Don't let that put you off if that's suddenly been something you thought, oh, okay, they're all saying it's a lot of work. Because when we were going through the online course and moved into the portfolio section, we had already made some artifacts that we could directly use in our portfolio. So there was some time saving there. If you did well on the online and it was marked as a pass, it could go straight into the portfolio. So it's worth keeping that in mind too.
Good tip, yeah. And I think sort of a lot of the things that naturally teachers are doing in the classroom, there's a time limit, isn't there, on the artifacts you can use? They need to be within a certain amount of time and when you submit. Is that right? 2
years.
So things that you're doing day to day can be utilized. It's not all net new content that you have to create.
No, and often, since by the time you finish your portfolio, you're 4 to 6 months or even longer from when you started the process. So you will have started implementing some of these things in your work day to day anyway, hopefully. If you've gone 7 months that haven't, then you haven't paying enough notice. So it's not sitting there doing new stuff all the time. It's identifying, yeah, I used it well there. Let's use that as evidence. So it's not sitting down and doing all this extra work all the time. A lot of it is identifying when you did do a good job in your actual day-to-day work, and you can use that as your evidence.
Awesome.
Can I just quickly add something on top of that? You also have the moments when you realize oh, I could have done this so much more efficient for myself and my students, and it could have helped the learning process so much more if I would have just tweaked this small thing. And all of these things come to you while you're working on the portfolio as well. So it's not like major changes, but just you have a different awareness of what's happening. Just because you have those standards on your mind and on the top of your mind, then you can just look at what you're doing.
Well, that's one of the key things, isn't it, in the training, is you will become almost sort of, you will know the standards inside out. Well, is it like the Matrix, where just in every learning scenario, you're like, oh, that is C.
That's a 3C, that's a 4D, that's a 4D.
I talk a whole new language.
I was in a training session, Ben, with a school, and they were on a particular piece of software, and at the end of it, somebody said, do you know any software that does X, Y, and Z? And I said, oh yeah, this particular piece of software, I know of it, but I've never used it. And the teacher said, would you mind if we had a look? And normally I'd have said, give me a week, I'll learn a bit, I'll teach you. And I thought, oh, standard, that'll take us time to do this. And I got really excited, and we did it there and then. So it was, you know, you do actually change your process. It's on your mind all the time, and you're fitting it in where it's coming in your natural teachers. So it is quite a fun thing to do, but it is rigorous too. It's well worth doing.
Okay, there we have it. So I've just posted in the comments. Please do let us know if you've got any questions, and obviously sort of continue to reach out, and we'll reply to those. So the ISTE certification, you can host that at your school if you feel that you're in a situation where that is possible, and one of our amazing trainers will come along and deliver that 2 days, and then you'll get the follow-up of the online support as you move towards that certification. You can do the 100% online option, and the link is still there if you want to find out a bit more about that. And yeah, we're just really excited to be able to continue to work with schools on developing their effective use of technology, in addition to our Google for Education work, also through the AE Learning Lab and ISTE. So thank you so much to everyone. Thank you, Bogdan, for your Gmail tips. Thank you, Wendy, for your contribution on this and the ISTE standards. And I know that you were one of the shining lights that everyone kind of referred to, very timely with your portfolio submission. So great to get your insight on that one. And Gitta, you mentioned it earlier, your very late nights. And I know some of those were dedicated to ISTE at times, but just for everyone out there, you don't need to do it between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. That's just a Gitta way of working when Ellis is sleeping, I think is the key bit, isn't it? Cool. So I just wanted to bring back in a couple of things to remind you of. So there's still a chance, if you want to use that link to sign up, to win some free tickets to some of the boot camps or summits. So we'd love to sort of be able to offer that up to as many people as possible. So please do submit that via that form there, the gsummit.link/ACER. Massive thank you to Roberto at ACER. These free events are things that we're able to do with ACER's support. So we continue to thank them for making that possible and providing the backing that they do. And without further ado, if there are no more questions, I will let you all head out to the rest of your afternoons, evenings, early mornings, depending on where you're viewing from. And obviously, if you're picking this up at another time, hopefully you found lots of tips to make it really useful for you. So yeah, massive thank you. We have got some future summits coming up. The next one on November the 7th will be specifically North America focused, where we're going to be looking at maths and science related support. So for the STEM classroom, particularly maths and science, we've got some great tips from some great trainers there. And obviously subscribe and keep up to date with the tips and tricks coming from SETI and everybody else as well. These videos are getting chopped up into bite-sized pieces. So within a few sort of days or weeks, you'll be able to see Bogdan's Gmail section just chopped down specifically for you. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day and bid you all farewell. Bye, everyone.
See you.
Thank you.
I don't understand.